Something we haven't touched on here yet is Bigfoot. I'm a firm believer in the possibility of the creature, but it isn't something I've ever wanted to touch on here, mostly because sightings cover the entire planet. It's not something unique to the American South. But then again, neither are ghosts. So that got me to thinking. Let's look at some of the more localized reports pertaining to the South and see just how far back we can go with that. There's one that most everyone in the cryptid and Bigfoot circles has heard of before. The Fouke Monster, made famous by the 1972 docudrama horror film, The Legend of Boggy Creek. That one has even been requested by longtime viewer Kevin Go Dogs, and despite the awful screen name and choice in college sports teams, I may circle back around to that one day. War Eagle, Kevin. But today, I thought we'd focus on a slightly different one. One newspapers of the day called the Arkansas Wild Man. One from the same area of the Fouke Monster. Perhaps even an ancestor. And quite possibly, the first documented Bigfoot hunt on American soil. Everyone loves a good, strange, weird, or bizarre story. Well, welcome to the American South, where dark legends and haunted history lurk around every corner. Where superstition, folklore, and a touch of backwoods magic blend with everyday culture. Some say, in order to survive. This is Dixie After Dark. In the late winter and early spring of 1846, a series of sightings and reports spread throughout the Crowley Ridge area of eastern Arkansas, making their way into local newspapers, then spreading nationwide. Stories describing a wild man were being told by settlers in the remote regions of Arkansas. All accounts describe the wild man as being completely covered with brown hair or fur, and much larger than the average man. One article published on March 13, 1846, tells of a footprint being measured. His track measured 22 inches. His toes are as long as a common man's finger, and in height and make, he is double the usual size. Double may be a bit of a stretch due to fear, astonishment, the stereotypical fish that got away story, coupled with the fact that the average height for a settler in those times was between 5'4" and 5'7" inches. But later articles started to put the wild man into a bit more believable light, with descriptions that largely mirror modern-day Sasquatch sightings. Sightings continued through the years, and on May 29, 1851, an article from the Memphis Inquirer stated that several hunting expeditions were being sent out after the wild man, after it had been caught chasing and harassing several herds of cattle. He was of gigantic stature, the body being covered with hair, and the head with long locks that fairly enveloped the neck and shoulders. The wild man, after looking at them deliberately for a short time, turned and ran away with great speed, leaping from 12 to 14 feet at a time. The article goes on to point out that the wild man had been seen in St. Francis, Greene, and Poinsett counties for at least 17 years, putting the earliest reports as far back as the year 1834. By this time, patterns and descriptions can be compiled and commonalities started to emerge. The creature seemed to always be spotted in the swampland surrounding the Mississippi River in eastern Arkansas, and the general consensus now put the creature at around 7 foot tall. The different hunting trips after the wild man through the summer of 1856 produced many more sightings, but that was about it. No concrete proof was ever gathered from these trips. Then that winter, one of the more bizarre encounters of the Arkansas wild man I ever came across was reported. The Athens Post reported the wild man had been spotted in northern Louisiana around the Upper Red River, breaking ice on the riverbank. This sighting described the beast as, quote, covered with hair of a brownish cast and well muscled. A group of Louisiana men band together with the goal of capturing the wild man, tracking it for days throughout northern Louisiana and back into Arkansas, where they were later joined by a band of native Choctaw hunters. They eventually came up on the wild man again, and one of our good old Cajun boys rushed ahead to take on the creature himself. And, well, let's just read the news. The infamous Arkansas wild man has been encountered lately near Sunflower Prairie. Chase was made after him by a party accompanied by dogs. One of the party in chase, who was mounted on a fleet horse, headed him just as he emerged from the woods to which he had taken to when discovered. But as soon as he found himself at bay, he bounded at the rider, tore him from his saddle, gouged out one of his eyes, and bit a large piece from his shoulder. He then threw the saddle and bridle from the horse, mounted the animal, and dashed off at full speed. The rider's party, having been joined by a party of Indians, continued the chase, and a belief is entertained in Arkansas that he will be captured. As later reports would show, the Arkansas wild man would, in fact, not be captured. Later reports say that the hunting party chased the wild man all across the state and into the Washita Mountains, where it was lost in the snow-covered mountains in the western part of the state. It was this account that got me interested in covering this story. I've always been interested in Bigfoot lore, but admittingly, I'm not as well versed in it as with ghosts and such. But this is the first time I've ever read about a Bigfoot riding a horse. Can you imagine that sight? I've never had a Bigfoot encounter myself, but if I ever do, that's the one I want to see. Minus the biting and eye gouging part, that is. It seems the hunting party never flushed the Arkansas wild man out of its territory though, as sightings continue today, in both the swamplands of the Mississippi River and in the Washita and Ozark Mountains, so there has to be a sizable breeding population. Sightings as early as 1834, up to the famed Fouke monster in 1972, and well into modern times. People continue to see both a Bigfoot-type creature as well as a multitude of other cryptids and supernatural things in those remote areas. And the isolated lands of Arkansas seem content on holding its secrets.